Hello and welcome to Sean's Afterhours. Hi, my name is Shone and I'm the host of my podcast. I hope that you're doing super amazing. I definitely am. See, I'm of the faith that the world is going to get remarkably better very soon. And not necessarily better as in bleep better, but I think the idea of life getting less than it already is, I think it's about to have a major reversal. And that's kind of the information that I've coagulated or brought together from so many different sources. That for such a long time, we have had a world that was challenged by so many different struggles. So many different challenges between people, so much separation, so much war, so much all the lower vibrations. Fear mostly being one of them. See, I started to create the last podcast that I was writing, and maybe I was making the wrong one because I want to go directly into how I see everyone out there in the world. I see everyone connected and everyone equal and everyone, worthy of being unified, being together, being unseparated. And for me, that's just such a strong feeling when I feel that love for everyone. But yet, I also at the same time, I recognize the programming that was installed in me. See, I'm personally working through it right now. And that programming essentially was all of the African American music, the rap music. It programmed me into seeing, African Americans as dangerous. And when I know they're not, I know that we all, regardless of what color we all have some people that are dangerous, but there's no group of people more dangerous than the other. And I see that music, when I say that music, I mean the rap music, which basically glorified violence in the 90s and early 2000s, regardless of the gender or the color, they glorifying violence. It took our people to a very highly increased separation. And yeah, I witnessed and I recognized the programming on me because I've never had an issue with, anyone that was African American, at least not in my memory and or reincarnation. Maybe it did in the past, who knows? But I can feel that fear trying to get at me today when I was taking my walk into the Surrey Central area near the SkyTrain. Even though I so enjoyed just watching all of these young men, mostly, there was a couple women there, but from different areas, I could tell that they were all speaking different languages, and I'm not sure what type of languages I was hearing. Puerto Rican, I think, was one of them. And people from all different parts of Africa, as far as I'm aware, looking at people's, skin tones. You could see people from all over the place. And I just watched it with such delight because it was young people getting out and just enjoying the evening, and a group of them were playing with the volleyball without a net, just sharing the ball between them and this other kid who possibly was 9 years old, maybe 10 or 11. I don't know what the youth are, but there was definitely a younger brother that was there. And I thought that was so cool, and it led a really good example for how the world could be going forward. And there were other skin tones walking through the area, and it just felt so wonderful. But I could definitely feel the element of fear trying to creep in, and although I had no reason to be. See, first of all, one of the things I've kind of learned is we eventually, and some of us more than others, can feel emotion, feel the general emotion of an area, for example, of maybe the collective energy of the people there, perhaps. But at the same time, I also think that because of that programming that I had with the rap music, it opened me up to be able to envision that life, or that people could be like that. And so it was, and when I mean like that, I mean living the life that artists like Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre and Nas and the Wu-Tang Clan, that life could be. And I'm not saying that it wasn't, but what it did is it programmed me to make that association with, depending on how the person dressed. And the whole thing about this is I love all people. Like, I love people regardless of where they're from. I love them regardless of what gender they think they are. Choose your own adventure. Or what type of relationships they want to be a part of. Or overall, what type of people they want to be. If people want to dress up with, big this or that, or do their hair, whatever it is, wear a dress, don't wear a dress, be naked, don't be naked. Like, I guess there definitely comes in, community. The fact is the community could just accept everyone for the way they are. If someone wanted to walk down the street naked, just don't look that way. And if people are looking that way, then they're making a choice to look that way. I think there's been a lot of separating us from even the idea of love. But getting back to what I was saying, I love absolutely everyone. Africa, Antarctica, all those people that are living there. That continent in the Arctic, all those people living there. North America too, of course, South America, obviously. The whole Tartarian Empire. And I see that, and then I feel that, and I recognize that as those programs, as if there's energies that are trying to get in on me. And I'm like, no, I don't believe that. And why I think that, I guess this is important to talk about, is that I have become aware of that through my own experience in a sort, and it could have possibly come from the healing that I did with the I Am the Word book series. Like, I did so much healing, I guess, through that book. And that's the book right now that I'm reading. And I think that book is very powerful. And that's the way it touts itself. It touts itself as a powerful book that can help the reader align to the Christ frequency, and the Christ frequency being that frequency of love, that strongest connection between us and God. It's as if God is moving through us when we're in love. Maybe not as if, maybe it is. Yeah. So I could definitely feel that program, and without people knowing that program, they could get swept up in the fake programmed feelings they have for people. There's been a lot of orchestrated deception, which created separation between so many different races in this country. And that's essentially a big part of how they did keep us separated from one another. Originally, it was through language, so that we wouldn't be able to communicate, and then moved us around to different parts and different areas. And then it was, focus on borders and separate people that were perhaps once brothers by a line called East and West of the same place. There has been so much separation, and yet the collective point is that we are all here. And we are all sharing this planet. We're sharing this country, this continent, this planet, this city. We're sharing the cities that we live in. So back to what I was saying before in the other audio is Surrey has turned into a remarkable city. A city of such diversity in language, in culture, in ethnicity, of skin tone. It's not about skin color, it's about skin tone. Because there's light beige and then dark beige. Or we can call it whatever words we want, but the reality of it is it's skin tone. It's just a change in shade. I'm thinking all these different things in my head about, just slogans for unity. And maybe that's what we could possibly all do. Maybe in this podcast, if you get to this part, leave a slogan for global unity. Put your own slogan out for this particular podcast in the comments. Because I think the opportunities to live a completely different life based just on our decision is coming to a theater near you. And the theater being this world that we live in. It's a big theater, apparently, a big illusion, a big movie script. The closest movies, if you want to perhaps see, is somewhere in between the movie Truman Show and the movie The Matrix. Mostly The Matrix 1 and 4. And maybe even Bliss. I don't so much think. It's also kind of like the movie Free Guy. So Bliss, Free Guy, Matrix 1 and 4, and that other one that I was talking about. And then after this movie's over, perhaps we get into a movie that's somewhat similar, or at least setting similar, to the movie Elysium. Or maybe the end of the Hunger Games. Like that difference, that we will get to that difference of a society between the Hunger Games and us. Meaning that what the world that we live in perhaps could be seen as the difference between those two civilizations, that maybe the civilization that we're going to essentially connect with relatively soon perhaps would be that type of advancement. But yeah, back to what I was saying about the programming, is that most people don't realize there's programming to that level. So that's something that I would say that there's going to be a lot of work to do on that, I wonder. See, part of me would think that if we drop the overlays and we drop the artificial, then those things which were artificial will suddenly be no longer, and perhaps those are material manifested, and or maybe technologies or programmings within us, maybe artificial programming as well will disappear, and we'll suddenly be like, oh. But then, the challenge there lies the realizations and such. But it's interesting. It's quite interesting that Carrie Kay recently talked about, as light workers, that we weren't going to want to stick around and provide a lot of our energy as disclosure starts to happen, because we have been here and we have spent that energy and tying ourselves to the past to spend that time explaining all the things that happen to those people who finally want to know what's happening. But I don't know. I get the general sentiment. I get the idea that we have to move forward just as they have to move forward. So we all have to move forward. And just by the fact that we will continue being ourselves, we will continue rippling and leading the way, but yet not get mired in trying to play that know-it-all and telling everyone everything. Which, of course, then leads into me, because I like telling everyone everything that I kind of understand. And I think that as the time goes by, I'm getting a lot more, I guess you could say, authentic or sincere or truthful. Because there's things before that I wouldn't necessarily talk about because they seem so far and out there. And yet, it's obvious that I'm at a place where I really do believe the world is getting better, and therefore I'm willing to go all in. And being here to witness such a dynamically beautiful, evolved city, Surrey, regardless of all the stories, I realize this is my home, this is my roots, this is where I was born. And see, they even tried to separate me from my city. Growing up, this was always gossiped about, this city. There was always bad slang for the women of our city, which separated me from, feeling connected to the land as I kind of feel now. See, because I recognize my home, but at the same time, it's changed so drastically by the demographics, yes, but also by the skyline. And yet it still maintains all of the beautiful trees that are almost everywhere, and all the parks and hidden trees in so many different areas. Like Green Timbers is such a beautiful area, and then they got so many other parks. Like Surrey is always known for trees and parklands. I think that they've done an amazing job maintaining that, regardless of the crazy stuff that's been going on. And I think that there's so much more potential here. Like there's a place called Bristol Estates that I used to live in, maybe even as a super young child. I'm not sure, but I definitely had aunts and other family members live there. And it's this area that they tore down that was a low-income housing. And they tore it down, and, I would love to see that turned into a park. Forget any developer coming in and trying to add more sky rises to things. If it is that we are coming to where our ground command says that we're coming, this is to the end, so we don't need to start any more projects. Perhaps we can finish up all the apartments that we have now, if that's a needed thing, and provide ample living for all the people that are living in that area. Wouldn't that be a thing? That the number of people that are not permitted to, but encouraged to live in a city equal to the number of homes that are in that city. Wouldn't that be an amazing thing? See, that's even thinking differently of just building stuff. And you can have a monetary trade value, sure, if you'd like. But just to have all the homes that are available for people to come, and they just inhabit them, and then when they no longer inhabit them, they leave them, and then they remain vacant until someone from somewhere else wants to come and inhabit them. And that cities all over the world have that, however many people that live in the city, that there are homes for them, all of them. Wouldn't that be an ideal goal to get to? That's definitely an amazing place to live. So, yeah, I kind of just wanted to share with you about my idea of love. And I honestly believe that when awareness has been achieved, awareness of everything that has happened, and because of that awareness, we're able to work on forgiveness and understanding, that releasing all of those traumas is what gets you to have that feeling of, first, neutrality for everyone, and then love for everyone. And that when we get rid of that program, and that's a program that I continue to work on clearing daily, or not daily, but quite often, just the realization that I have no reason to have any fear because of some rap music that I listened to when I was a kid. Like, that's the past stuff. But my realization helps me and allows me to get through that, to journey through that trauma, releasing it and continuing to work with it, even though there are perhaps programs that try to re-trigger it, recognizing that, it's fear. And that's really what it is. That program, the movie, programmed in a fear through visual representation of a skin tone and a people from a certain origin. And it programmed me through listening to those lyrics on repeat and really setting my emotion into it, because I felt what they were essentially talking about as, they rapped their lyrics, and most of them were about shame, guilt, and pain and anguish. Even when, someone's trying to be hard, often that's done out of anger and other lower vibrational feelings. And when you repeat that, whether it's as the artist themselves or the listener keeps, getting really into it, I would listen to a song and I would feel the song. And I realize now it's because I was feeling the emotions coming from the artist. And so I could feel the pain of Eminem. I could feel the pain of Dr. Dre. I don't know if I could feel the pain of Snoop Dogg, but I could feel the pain of some of those people, Tupac. I could feel the pain through the music, and that's what really connected. And maybe for me, that's why I liked who I liked, is because I could feel their emotions. Like Chester Bennington's pain, I could feel his pain through his words. And when I sang them, I could, channel that pain, which, maybe that is the program that I'm working on, is the release of pain to do with that rap music. Anyways, as I was saying, most people don't have the recognition of that. However, if we work on awareness, and therefore awareness is the understanding of that, but also releasing the trauma that it did cause, so that we can get all of us to that state of love for one another regardless. And I think that that's a lot closer than we would imagine. I think a lot of us have been taught through movies and such to look at different people from different countries and to get an illusion of them. It wasn't just me with the gangster rap music. It was also the Russians against the Americans, Americans against the Russians, and the Germans against themselves. The shame for what happened. I've heard stories of that, of younger generations feeling that challenge of the history. There's a lot of other situations that have been forced upon people to get us to, separate ourselves from each other. Anyways, love for all. I love the train, yeah. Actually, I really like the train, perhaps from this distance. It's not as bad as, this one's a little louder than the other ones, but it's not as bad as the other one, the other audio that I did when I was beside the train. I love the topic of love. I really, really do love the second book in the Paul Selig series. It's called The Book of Love. And I'm really excited to actually get back to rereading that book. And I would truly love to read The Book of Love with a book of resident people who understood love to the degree that I feel connected to the idea to it, at least. Yet I would really like to connect a group of people who all loved one another without concern, without worry of color or gender or how those people, express themselves, as long as it was always respectful and didn't violate the will of others. I think that a world composed of that connection of love would have a greater increased chance of living a world that was completely wonderful. I mean, where poverty didn't exist. I mean, where anger and hostility, war, greed, all those other lower vibrational stuff, when those didn't need to exist anymore. And I do believe it's possible. It's not that there's a fairy tale land and it's just poof going to be there. There is, of course, work to get there. And I kind of get that my journey has been to lead me towards the understanding of that being possible for a greater benefit of all. Yeah, we'll talk more about that later. All right, thank you so much for sharing your time and intention with me. I know you're just seeing a silhouette of myself. Oh, well, there, I got a little bit of a light there for a second. But these beautiful buildings in the background and the potential for a far greater world than we've ever had, I think is totally possible if we decide collectively, unanimously, that it's all time to heal. The time to work through our differences and see each other as fellow human beings, Homo sapiens, people of Earth. Have a good night.